All right, we are live. So,
I was gonna say, since you're the headmaster, how you start us off then?
yes, that's what I'm going to do. Welcome everyone who's watching. Right now, there is no one watching, but that's fine. We're gonna just keep talking, and if you feel like jumping in and observing, that's okay. The first thing I want to do is I have 3 DMs here, myself included, and I want to talk about this here in front of me. Okay, I don't know if either of you recognize it.
Oh, that's the map we was on when we first started. When I was Leon, and somebody shot. He will not be named. Shot my familiar that we had as an eye in the sky.
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned that because that was literally my first thought when I saw this map, but I didn't want to say anything because I wasn't sure if it was from your new Star Wars game or not. But yes, all too familiar. And no, I was not the one who shot his familiar.
I'm glad. That's a part of why I was leaving it like vague and kind of secret squirrel. I didn't say anything because it's like I'm gonna let it sit there and let it sit there, and they'll figure it out in a moment what this is. Okay, and I want to use this to springboard the topic because from this campaign, from this encounter, I learned so much as a DM. Because up until really playing with Benefactor here, I didn't have any like hardcore players in my game. No min-maxers, nothing like that. I've played with min-maxers, but I've never had any min-maxers come to my game who are like, I'm going to make the most overpowered character ever and then have to deal with them. And it was a good experience. It was a great experience because it then allowed me to deal with my brother when he plays, because he looks to play the most ridiculous, outlandish characters who do the most insane, ridiculous things. He's the guy who looks for having some item you give him. How can he make this item so broken and overpowered? How? And he actively looks to do that. So I wanted to bring this up, and that was it was Anvari who shot your familiar, right?
Yeah, it was definitely him.
It was a vulture you had, a pet vulture, I think.
It was a shadow that I changed a different familiar type, and this one was the raven one that flew. Okay. And he wasn't paying attention. Everybody else knew what that was. He wasn't paying attention and thought when we got into combat that was an enemy, and said, I shoot this thing. And no one said anything. And he was like, okay, he shot it. And I'm like, the fuck is wrong with you? Everybody's like, that was our eye in the sky. And it was great. I was trying not to name the person's name, but yes, that was the player Anvari, and I will never forget it. Just shot that shit straight out. And we're like, why?
What was it, like second session, and then it just became the meme of the entire like 2-year-long campaign?
Yes. It was perfect allegory for what would happen in the future. Just every single opportunity, the team shooting themselves in the foot or in their familiar's wing. But one of the things that I learned from this, one of the most exciting parts of this, was these guys, these buddies right here, the infamous dactyl men, my little dactyl men who were why are they misshapen? Roll20 is messing with my dactyl men. Yeah, my dactyl men. I remember my brother was really upset over these guys being able to just grab you and lift you the frick away, just like grab you and boom, you're off. I loved it. I thought it was great. I was so happy, and it was great. I had recently come across the rules that made me think of this. One of the rules, because I was making a character for the game that we're going to play tonight, Benefactor, and I was reading one of the rules, and one of the rules are grappling. You have to make grappling checks. Well, you don't have to make grappling checks if you're an NPC. And I was like, that is so much bullshit. that is so overpowered. And I'm so glad that my dactyl men could use that. They could just fly in, grab you, and they don't have to care. They're just, yep, I grabbed you because I'm an NPC.
Wait. Sorry. And there's no opposing checks either on the PC part.
There is an initial check. Okay, it's an attack roll, so it's your AC basically.
Oh, okay.
If they succeed on the AC and they have the ability to grapple, they just automatically succeed.
Yeah, if you check the monster manual and various other monster things, you'll see a lot of monsters. Literally, they hit you. It's like, oh, you are grappled and restrained. And in order to end this effect, you then have to then go against a particular DC they have risen on you.
Yep.
I did to you guys before as well in my campaign. That's how when the players got grappled and restrained by that giant big ass monster that you guys like just ignored him grappling him as he was like wailing on it to save his own life. So
Which one was it? You have to remind me.
because you guys were a lot. It was in the last dungeon you guys was in.
Oh, like that flesh abomination thing?
No, not that one, but that was a good one too. But no, it was the other one that was appears. It was one of the mini enemies. It was one of the ones that appeared with the one that you guys that can drain your magic and then sink into the walls. And
Oh yeah,
it was
that's
the
fun.
big one that was with that during one of the encounters.
Oh,
That
so it was like
had
big boss
Gisela.
one.
I can't remember the name.
Oh.
That had Gisela restraint and grapple that whole time, and she had to just beat her way out of it.
Yeah, nobody bothered to help her. Oof. We're just like, yeah, she's fine.
Jackaran Hicker had a similar incident, which was in the first one, or technically the second one, with the water elementals, where no one helped anybody pull the other out. So they got sucked to the water and was just sitting there freezing, and no one decided to just pull them out. And like, you guys can help them get out, but yeah.
Yep. No one wants to help anyone ever. And that's something that I have frequent conversations with people about. You know, when people ask me, like, why do you want to play a healer? And it's like, well, because the healer is a supporting role. And I was actually just talking to some guys about this just before we started the stream, was, you know, like my role in real life. For some reason, God has blessed me with the ability to be a support character. I'm great at support. I could do the spotlight. I could do the front line thing, but especially if it's a tank role. But if it's support, I'm good at that. Whether it's an FPS or whether it's an RTS, if you put me on support, you just give me a specific thing you want me to do, I can do that one thing very, very efficiently. And, you know, it's like, that's something that I look for in tonight's game that we're going to play. I don't know what the encounter is, what the module is, but my character is a healer, and my objective, my goal is I want to support the team. And everyone's looking at me like, well, cast some spells, do something. It's like, no, I'm not going to cast spells when it's not necessary. I'll just use a cantrip. Like I tapped like one guy and gave him resistance, you know, like, here you go, resistance. You know, I tapped another guy. Here's guidance. Just go ahead and have a bonus to your roll when you need it. You know, if you don't need it, then don't use it. If you need it, then you have it. I was going to cast Bless, but I was like, that seems like a waste of a spell slot just for, you know, we're fighting plants, psychic plants. Like,
I mean, again, it depends on the circumstance, but I don't mean to interject, but while we're kind of on this sort of topic, like, I guess one of the best ways to broach the whole miscommunication thing is to really establish communication in your group, and that's a really, really hard thing to do. But once you have it, it solves like 90% of issues, I'd say.
that's a very good point. I was going to say,
because these things wouldn't happen if people communicated in character, ideally, so that there's no metagaming going on. But again, there's all sorts of DM tricks we could pull to be like, nope, you can't communicate. But regardless, communication in your group and with your DM and your players, communication in general is just one of the most important things in establishing a great game.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a great contrast to talk to my brother about his game, because in my game, this particular game here, this is the End Times campaign I ran, and I gave you guys a really powerful item that you guys used a lot, and we were talking about this last week, Potato, when we were talking about even doing the stream, we were talking about communication and how different it is in a medieval setting, fantasy setting, versus a or a modern age setting, where with the DC Vertigo game I ran, everyone had cell phones, so they were able to communicate. In the End Times campaign, I gave everyone these communication stones so that they could communicate through the stones. But in my brother's campaign, they don't have anything like that. They need the message spell. They need their wizard to communicate back and forth messages. And if he is not on the ball, if no one has a way of communicating with the wizard, hey, we need to talk, then your message and your story gets lost in the weeds. And I don't remember in Benefactor, your game, if there were any sort of communication devices like that. I don't believe there were.
No, there were. They had cell phones. They had.
Okay, yeah.
Mine is a high
communication crystals.
We had to touch the stones. Yeah, that was a meme. You gotta touch stones. Gotta rub them together. I remember that. Yeah.
But going to his point, just because they were there doesn't mean we use them.
Yeah,
correct.
That's a different story.
Yes.
I gotta ask, was it an action to actually activate either of those items?
No. Well, one of you guys in combat together. Remember I told you guys are free to communicate at any point, which you guys never did. Mm-hmm. Just know that, and I did made that preset. Just know whatever you say out loud, the enemy can hear you say out loud. But no, It wasn't never like you needed action or anything. Like you guys were like out and about in the world doing things. You guys could have contacted each other at any point. I just think you guys forgot because of how little you guys really were using it. It didn't really facilitate in the things that I had you guys split off for. I guess the best example would be when you guys were split. I tell this to, if I don't know if he's watching, I did link to him, to Plasma Giga's Gilliam, when you guys had the Stampede event where you guys were inside the town and Jackaran and him and Adrian was outside the town. That was one of the major points of using those crystals to communicate, because you guys had things that you could have helped each other with while one is out, one is in. Y'all never did. He ended up just coming into the town and getting the job done. And barely at that. It took a while for them to even barely solve the problem at hand. And they called him to go to where Adrian was, back outside, to bring Adrian to the Earl, to then convince him to give the guild health potions, which could have saved time if using, the phones.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example.
Which I found funny because you guys definitely, when we got Mr. Boone in, definitely spent a session getting him a cell phone.
Right, just to not use it.
So, yeah, like it was there. You guys knew about them, and you just kind of like, it's all right. I even gave you guys a tab to keep listing your contacts, so you don't have to write notes in your contact. The notes are literally right there for you for your contacts in game. Easy peasy.
I think I did a good job of keeping track of that portion of it. And I do actually, now that you're bringing this up, it's all coming back to me. I do remember using them, but I don't remember using the cell phones particularly for combat scenarios, because we were mostly in proximity. But you're right, like that instance you mentioned when we were split off and there was that whole what was going on? It was the Stampede event you were mentioning earlier. Yeah, that whole Stampede event, that would have been a really great way to use that tool, but we just didn't think of it.
Yep. Yeah, well, that event kind of annoyed me from a in-character perspective, not a player perspective. From an in-character perspective, I felt like Gilliam, I think it was. It's like, you're the one who's tasked with putting together this defensive bulwark, right, against the Stampede that's coming against the town. You're in charge of this, and you aren't leading anything. You're just like, okay, well, here we are. We're going to just hold here and fight. And it's like, if Gustav were here, Gustav would be, okay, we need 3 men over here, 3 men right here. We have a gap in the line right here. I need 2 men ready to reinforce that. Like, he would be on it like white on rice. And Gilliam was just like, I'm going to stand over here. And it's like, okay, I guess that's our strategy here, is we're just going to free man every man for himself or something. And, my guy's John Constantine, he's over here like, all right, so we have these like barricades and wooden traps. The first chance I get, I'm going to set them on fire. And I know monsters don't like fire. So this is a great plan. It's solid. But once that fire is gone, you just lost that entire barricade. And yeah, it's like I don't quite know what he was planning to do with that whole thing. I don't even know how we got past it. I don't even know.
A whole lot of dead bodies. A whole lot of dead NPCs.
That's true. Yeah.
That's how we got past it. That's the answer, including like the Earl's son or something like that. And
No, his knight. It's his knight. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was his son.
Yeah, but that was unreal. That was very fun though. Very fun. Like I said, frustrating from an in-character perspective. And like I said, I played John Constantine. His mentality was the military is just completely incompetent here because they have no structure, no strategy. They hinged everything on an idiot.
Oof.
Well, that idiot was supposed to be either Gustav or Ash on the military side. The guild side was supposed to be Gilliam and an NPC that he's supposed to try to work with to get things done, as well in communication. But you dropped Gustav, which left it in the hands of Adrian and Ash, and we all know how that turned out with Ash. So
yes, yeah.
It's like the things I gave to the players to do.
It's been.
No, go ahead. You good?
As I say, it's been about 15 minutes. Let's go around the horn and introduce ourselves, and we can get an idea as to who everyone is and what we do. Do you guys want me to lead us off, or would either of you like to introduce yourself first?
You the boss man in this one. You started this up. Take the lead, buddy.
Okay. So I am Crusader Jackaran. If you're watching this, you've probably seen one or two of my videos, or if luckily YouTube was like, here's his video. I am a dungeon master. I've been dungeon mastering since I was like 10 with little Pokemon figures and Legos, and not being able to really read the rule book or understand the rule books. I was just going off of, hey, I have dice. I have little damage counters used for Pokemon. So those are your hit points, and we roll the dice, and we just came up with just all kinds of crazy stuff. And now I am an adult playing all kinds of tabletop games, and I play Star Wars, 5e, and 3.5. Those are my go-to. And Cypher now. Cypher is my new one. But I'm currently in 2 games right now. 2 games. And let's go to Benefactor.
This is your good best friend, the Benefactor here. Been a player for many years now. I don't know, 10, 15 years or so. Started myself off in Pathfinder, and now I find myself DMing for a majority of games now. I'm making my own game system, and I pretty much just enjoy min-maxing or power gaming, as some of you haters like to call it, in the games that I play. I like to make my characters who they are. You may know me from such short films as League of Legends and TFT. Hope you followed me on my channel. It's ChaosRyzen on YouTube. Lady Potato.
There you go.
All right, guys. So I'm Lady Potato. I actually started my D&D and tabletop journey here with these guys, surprisingly enough. That was probably about 4 years ago now, and since I have graduated to playing many of my own games, including DMing, which is why I'm here today. I've ran a couple campaigns so far, but comparatively to these guys, I'm still relatively new. I have been a player in probably several campaigns at this point, and I've branched out playing. I play things like Cypher, as he mentioned, some World of Darkness, as well as 5e, of course. And right now, I am currently in a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition game. And that's about it for me.
Awesome. You brought up Vampires of the Masquerade, and I thought I have, I think, two experiences of playing. What is it? L5R, Legends of the Five Rings. It's like a samurai game, a samurai D&D. Really fun. It was interesting. I was way too young to understand that type of game system. Like I'm thinking it's like D&D, and you just run in, and you're rolling dice, and you're beating people up, and it's cool. But no, that game was a lot of politics and understanding how to manipulate and maneuver different clans and everyone's interest. You know, some clans want farmland, some clans want horses, some clans want military power. And so like I was way too young to play that game. Just way too young. And it's like if you were a samurai and you did something dishonorable, disrespectful, you could lose your title and you could become a ronin, or you could become a ninja. And if you became a ninja, you were like automatically like enemy of all of the samurai ever, which is fun. But you know, being a stupid kid, not knowing anything, that's a risk you got to be like, do I really want to be the enemy of everyone in the party?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Vampire the Masquerade has a lot of those same type of themes in a sense that, like, if you step out of line or if you do something wrong and really mess up, like, for example, if you show a human your powers and break the masquerade, that's a big deal. That could be something that could get your character blood hunted, which is essentially the rest of the vampires will relentlessly kill you or hunt you down. And it's very faction based and political in a lot of games. And I would also say that there's an element of the game system is designed around humanity and making sure that, I guess, in a sense, it's really bad in terms of what happens physiologically and psychologically if you lose too much humanity. And it's a very interesting system, but um, and it goes a lot of it takes basically all of the cliches of anything vampire related and kind of works them into its own little system. But it's very cool and
So you can
definitely
have
fun.
like a black cape, and it has the little neck frills. You can articulate. You have that like Dracula's cape.
I mean, you could, but you're gonna look weird if you're gonna be in like modern nightclubs.
Nah. That's totally normal. That's totally normal.
Listen, make yourself look so obvious that no one ever believes it.
Right. Like an Elvis impersonator. Like Gomes would be like, "Hey, nice Dracula outfit," and you're like, "Who's Dracula?" Like, it'd be great. But what I want to talk about this is tying it back to stories. This campaign here, this End Times campaign, I originally wanted this story to be a survival. It wasn't supposed to be a long game. It wasn't supposed to have this gigantic plot and story. It was supposed to be survival. It was eventually you guys would die and the players would just get overrun. And I tried to paint that stage with the very beginning here with the Dactyl Men. And I think before you guys fought the Dactyl Men, you guys had a town raid. You guys were in the little campment and a bunch of raiders attacked the town. And that's sort of what created this urgency to go out into the desert and look for supplies or whatever have you. And that was essentially the gist of the campaign. I had this goblin lair set up. I know the Benefactor he had done with he had in my previous campaign before this one, he hated the mines, or he was just constantly swarming in goblins. I had just thrown goblin horde after horde after horde, and the players somehow persevered through over 100 goblins trying to kill them. I hope that was great. I enjoyed it.
I remember my issue with that was you did not have enemy variety. That it just got boring and annoying because it's like every time we turned, there was a lot of goblins. At first it was like cool, but now it's like, okay, this is now getting boring and annoying. Where it got to the point I was like, Zane, just fireball me as I'm in the middle of them. I'm good.
But what ended up happening with this End Times campaign was we got a player in it who completely sidetracked the whole premise of the world. Because like when you set up a campaign, This is great DM advice, and this is part of why we're doing the stream, is for DM advice. Like, hey, here's some good things that you DMs might want to know. When you start a campaign, you want to have a story. And that's why a lot of people go to modules, because they already have the pre-run story. It's there. They have all the resources. It's there. They just drop it in. They don't have to do any creativity, no thinking on their own. It's just done. I don't typically do that. I don't like running pre-game modules. I like to make all of the stuff from the ground up my stuff. So when I created this world, I had this whole world, this whole universe, and I had the idea as to how this world got into an end time state, which is post-apocalyptic. That's what it means to be end times. And I had this whole narrative, this whole idea. And then I had in there a condition that would say, this is how you can end the end times. This is how you can fix everything. And I put that condition in because my idea was this campaign is going to be short-lived. It's going to end, and I can then springboard a more consistent campaign that's in the end time setting. So all the players who've played in the end times, they know how hardcore it is, how survival is like, etc. And now they know going in the world they're going to be in. Okay, this was my mentality. But then we got Dawn, the character Dawn in the game. And she is a part of that condition to fix everything. And I wouldn't have thrown that onto her. I wouldn't have thrown that responsibility onto her shoulders if she didn't do two things. The first was play a life cleric. And the second, she named her character Dawn. And I was like, she's a life cleric. That could technically make her the character I'm thinking of. But her character isn't named Dawn. And so when we were making her character and it got to her name, she was thinking of like Morgana. I think that was one of the names she wanted. She was like, I think Morgana or Morgan. And I think like Chloe was another name she was thinking of. And then she was like, Dawn. And I was like, that's their name. All right, she is sealing her fate. She has no idea what she just signed up for. And I told her that. I was like, you have no idea what you just signed up for, but I'm in. It's great. And that changed the setting of everything. That changed the tone of everything for the game. Because no longer was I focusing on a survival. I was like, it's a survival, but these guys are now heroes. And these guys are going to be able to change the fate of the world. And that's what I rolled with, because that's what I'm good at. I love the heroes are out to save the world. I love that. So
yeah, I'm not down with that. I actually, not knowing that, I really wish she didn't play. Not to front to her, I prefer the adventure style. I've always been the adventurer kind of guy more than the heroic age story that, especially at 5e, has been kind of pushing more and more as of late with D&D. I'm very much more the kind of old school style of, you guys are adventuring, you guys have a life goal you guys want to accomplish, go forth and do that. If you run into trouble, that is on you if you wish to take that trouble upon yourself or ignore it. Do I have a story that's going on? Yes, but the main thing is you guys have to want to interact with that story. You guys want to have to interact with those choices and not just have that be the main thing you guys really run around and think about. I'm not really a big fan of the heroic age that we are in D&D. I prefer the adventure age. Go down to the dungeon, find treasure, find loot, make yourself a noble, find, a cure for your dead wife kind of thing. Those small little things which really focus on the players themselves and what they want to be and do and how they interact and help each other accomplish that. But knowing that now, I can see why the game went personally a little bit downhill for me in particular ways, because I'm not a big fan of the heroic age and being a hero.
Yeah, and we talked about that before. We've talked about that, and we like I said in our first game, you and I, the red flag I had for you was you were like, "What's your stance on evil character?" My experience with that is anyone who asks that question is not good news. And for some reason, I was like, just give him a shot, give this guy a shot, see how he does, But so it's like right there, I know it's like, okay, this guy and I don't really quite agree, and I didn't know that, as you said, it's like the age of heroes. I don't think I agree with that. I look
I
at it
have to
as,
agree with him, actually. Sorry. Again, continue.
well, I was gonna say it's. I don't think it's necessarily the age of heroes. I think that's always been Dungeons and Dragons thing. Just listening to players all over the place talk about it. It's even though they are adventurers, they take on the mindset of I'm a hero. I'm here to kill the vampire. The vampire are evil. They're bad. They're not good. There are no good vampires. And as time has gone on, we've changed some of those. But the gist of it is that's a part of the interesting part of D&D and exploring the worlds is it's like, okay, all vampires are evil. But then the DM introduces a vampire who's maybe not evil, but he's also not good. And then orcs are another one. It's like, oh, orcs are all evil. They're all bad. And then you come across the half-orc player, and you have to deal with the stigma of a half-breed who also half of his family doesn't like him. The other half doesn't like him for the other half of his, genes. And that to me is just that's always been a part of Dungeons and Dragons is the hero aspect. It's always been an adventure as well. So, well, I think what you're saying when you're saying hero, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of what you're saying is hero is you're this unstoppable Herculean force that just always wins. And that might be true with 5e, but I don't agree with that either.
A little bit of yes, a little bit of no for what you're saying. So what I call a heroic age, especially within, if we're gonna go back, I consider it the transition mostly when we hit the fourth, like a little bit of in the third, going into the fourth era, where a lot of DM people begin making stories where people are the heroes and being we're the only ones that can do X. We're the unstoppable ones that will stop this unstoppable villain. Like we're the immovable object against that unstoppable force that is the villain. You know what I mean? Where the main focus of the campaign is to be heroes of the planes. Let's put it that way. Whatever world so much you're playing in, and not so much you being a regular person out here that does something heroic. I'm fine with that. I have no issues with that aspect. My problem is when we are the heroes and not just doing heroic things. That's the big distinction I would make. In a lot of games nowadays,
like when you're typecast to just be a hero and that's your entire story.
In a sense, but I'm saying like nowadays, especially you had it more the other way in the older editions than you do now, because you did have people that were technically heroed as heroes, but they did heroic things that eventually turned them into heroes, and they were just mooks. They were just nobodies who slowly, eventually, either came across like the wand of Orcus, or now yes, there are times where some people may. So it's something you find throughout all ages where they, again, you say like Lord of the Rings, things like that, where people are heroes, or some people are like these beacons of things like Gandalf that join the nobodies and help turn them to heroes. I'm not saying it's never there. My problem is why I call the age of heroes that a lot of games, like you just said yourself, a lot of people, you've seen looking at other people, a lot of games now tend to be where your characters are the heroes of the story in the campaign. You're going along this path of stopping the evil. You're not really setting out on your adventure. You're setting out to stop Doskanal, the Godrender. You know what I mean? That is my issue with a lot of games. I've joined a lot of games in Roll20 and have felt that bright. I'm like, okay, this is not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a game where my backstory is inconsequential unless it has something to do with the Godrender or some shit like that, or it's like it's a big footnote. I rather where it's we are here doing adventure. We came together for whatever reason, be it money, fortune, some fame, whatever. We're here doing this adventuring. Can we be heroes if we choose to? Sure. And the best example I use, you wasn't there for this one, Jackaran, was the monastery incident. There was one you was there for, which was the one with Trina, where you guys had the choice to help her or not. you guys chose to do the quote heroic act and help her and figure out what's going on and save her teammates. You guys chose not to do that because that's not what you guys' character goals about. You owe not, the only person that owed anything to her was one character. It has something to do with his own story. A similar thing in the monastery had nothing to do with any of them, which they ran into later. Where a guy came, pretty much you say quest, quote unquote quest giver. They met and then he private investigator Adamus, and he was just like, okay, so I'm a private investigator trying to find these missing people. All of my clues and leads, everything keeps leading me to this strange town here in that monastery up there. I noticed, and this is with the major trigger being mostly on Rebecca being someone with knightly clothes, came to ask her, was like, I see you are, someone knightly and strong. Will you aid me in dealing with this problem? I'm going to leave at midnight. It's on you then if you have till then to decide if you want to join me or not. But I'm going regardless, with or without the players, to go and do X. Right?
Yeah.
That was their prerogative to be heroic or, do their own thing. And sorry about that, Miss Potato. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, yeah, like you did provide that, and sure, we were being heroic. However, speaking as the person who was playing Rebecca, I actually had ulterior motives, which was, do this thing, find the good people and have heroics, but not necessarily because I was a good person, but because I wanted the recognition for that act. So, I mean, that's up to the players to decide, but half the battle of being a DM is getting plot hooks and getting players to actually follow through with them, and having players that are willing to, either find reasons to do them, or I guess if you provide a reason that is going to satisfy them, like, let's say he would have offered us some sort of monetary value, that would have been something that you could have used to, I guess, persuade your players also to kind of go down that road. But yeah.
Hey, you guys helped that kid, Benjamin's cousin, at the kindness of your heart. Some people are not going to offer monetary. Some people aim for the kindness of your heart. You guys showed up there. So for him in that situation, it was like, he's like, okay, I'm here. I see people here. They're not part of this town. Maybe we can help. But you're right. There was also very many hooks or things I gave for you guys, characters, to be interested in doing that was never taken up upon based on your own character's backstory as a hook line. Gave, various places you guys can go and objectives to do. And, it never came. So sometimes even you give players particular hooks, they just won't take them at times. Even they'll say they take them, and then you're like 2 months in, and you're like, huh, still never done it. Looking at the guy that wanted security on the boat to be the head of security and gave him a chance to do it and just effed off. Brilliant.
Yeah. Well, see, what you're, I guess, where I guess I disagree with both of you, is like you're saying, like, oh, having that main villain, etc. Because let's admit it, Terrafal is just a straight up main villain. In that instance, in that case, you guys had provoked it. At least in my opinion, you did. From my perspective as a DM, it's like you guys stuck your nose where you shouldn't have, and
no, we didn't provoke it. The Benefactor provoked it by challenging him directly.
Listen, all right, that was a hook because he threw my god at me in my face and started talking shit.
Well, I was gonna say there was a few of you who got yourself on the radar. There were a few of you who did that, but yeah, I look at that as like, once the Eye of Sauron is on you, good luck, because Sauron now knows you exist. Now, I mean, you're fortunate that Sauron has multiple enemies. His enemies are numerous, so you're on the docket. He plans to get to you at some point, and it's you are lucky that you have the option of possibly sideswiping him or leading multiple charges against him. I'm failing at my Lord of the Ring terminology here of saying like Helm's Deep and Gondor and your army of undead, unkillable pirates. You
Oh, the
know,
Deus Ex Machina, right?
yes, yes. You know, that's how I kind of look at that. It's like and this is again, I'm DM and my ego is big, so I look at it as like, hey, I have my army of dudes, and the main villain in this case is a god. So the audience who's listening, so you're aware of who Terrafal is. He's a god, and as a god, he's looking at the players like, you guys aren't even worth my time. Like you guys are so insignificant. I'm winning so much. Like if it were a chessboard, the enemy team, his enemy team only has a king, a queen, and a rook on the table, and maybe a pawn on the table too. So he's looking at this like, I have the board. Like nothing happens without my allowing it to happen. And it's that super villain angle, that evil villain, that Disney villain angle of, I have so much control, I can't possibly lose, and victory has defeated you. I say that, but the players haven't completed that campaign. These guys haven't won that game yet. I still plan to go back to it. So the heroes might not actually win. That's still a possibility, because I have a lot of curveballs. It's still lined up. A lot of curveballs. But in as my point of bringing all that up is, and I have a few tricks for dealing with this. It's in story of trying to get players hooked and trying to get people into the story. And as a DM, you have to have the skill and the ability to act quick on your feet, and you have to have the ability to not necessarily be creative, but a way of just, if you're gonna steal something, steal it shamelessly. And something I say whenever it comes to like storytelling is, I tell people, I tell DMs, get to know all of your players. Spend like 1 or 2 sessions examining and poking and prodding the player characters, so that you can get an idea in your mind what character you know from pop culture. And then you throw an impression of that character from pop culture onto their character. I've told you both this before, so this is nothing new to you guys, but audience.
Yeah, I don't know how much I agree with this method, because in a way it almost sort of typecasts, like I understand from the DM's perspective, you're trying to understand and get a mold of what this character is and what they emulate, and sort of what sort of challenges might be suited to this character. But I I don't like the idea of typecasting your characters too much, because I just I can tell that players team tend to sense that when that happens, that their DM's just assuming things about their character, and that sort of, at least in my experience, when I've noticed that, it tends to rub me the wrong way. So I'm assuming there's other people who feel that way too.
And that can be fair. I want to ask you, do you feel that I've done that?
Um, a little. I feel like it with my first character in the End Times campaign, Sylvanas, a little bit, but not so much with Blair, because I believe that you and I had better communication over
Yeah, I agree.
who this character was in the beginning stages. So I think that your technique's great for using on inexperienced players who maybe don't know what they want for their own character, but for experienced characters and experienced players who are playing characters who you feel you already have a good picture in mind, it's probably not necessary.
Well,
I know you did it with me. My name tags in the Discord constantly changing. Clearly already made me know to do it with me. But me and you have the understanding of communication, even from the previous campaign. We're just like, I don't really care if you typecast me, as long as I'm able to somewhat feel like I'm achieving something that I want to achieve, or get something that I'm hoping to get. Even if it means I gotta go through hell and high water to get it. Even if I have to go and fight a god and his minions with 2 other people because the other 2 decide to fuck off somewhere against his language.
Well-
Sorry. I will go and fight that good fight.
well, I want to clarify on that, because when she's like saying typecasting, my method isn't to typecast. My method is you want to get out of typecasting ASAP. Okay. So what you do is when you talk to someone, you get an idea. And this is where like the player's perspective. Okay. If she said a lot or a little, that doesn't matter to me as a DM. You know, if you feel I'm typecasting you for the first 5 to 6 sessions, I don't care. You know, in my mind, or your first 5 or 6 sessions, I don't care, because that's the time I'm using. Like, you don't know this as players that I'm building up, and your players are gonna think this. They're gonna be like, "Oh, this guy doesn't understand my character." Blah blah blah. Okay, but me as a DM, this is just my style. I don't know if you two do this, but yes, I'm going to just go along with this like generic, vague understanding of someone's character, and that's fine for those few sessions that you're with them. Now, if you have like a month-long break, then you don't have to do this method of, every other session. We play weekly. So when we play weekly, it's like, okay, every session you got to come up with something, or you got to understand the character. But the idea is you give them an impression, you give them a template that you as a DM put onto them. All right. Now you shouldn't necessarily tell the player. I would not tell the player personally, but you get an idea. So I was using Lord of the Rings, so I'll use Lord of the Rings as an example. If you have a ranger in your party, okay, you put the impression of Aragorn on them. He's the ranger from Lord of the Rings. You put the impression of him. All right, and you give him the option. You give that ranger the option to take the route of, okay, you introduce the hobbits, they're the party, or the halflings in the party. You give him the option of whether or not he wants to take up the charge and escort these halflings, or if he wants to say, no, I don't want to do that. And at some point, as you follow down this template, the player is going to make a choice that isn't Aragorn's choice. And when they make that differing choice, you as a DM should be paying attention for that, because now this character is growing into their own shell. They're growing into being their own person. Okay. It's one thing if like players want to sit around and get drunk and smoke their pipes. That's one thing. But it's another thing entirely if they're like, hey, I want to go shopping, because you don't see Aragorn go shopping. Like that's not Aragorn. But that's also not really a defining thing of Aragorn. All right. If they say, oh, I want to lead the charge and escort the ring or something like that, now they're basically saying, yes, I want to be Aragorn. If they're like, no, I don't want to do that, I want to build a robot, now you have a little bit more perspective of this person's goals and agendas, and they're making their own character separate of Aragorn. So you as a DM have to back off at that point. You got to stop throwing Aragorn at them and say, okay, now this is Leandre and his story about building an android or a robot or whatever it is that he's doing. No, that's where the DM has to know when to take the training wheels off, because that's what you're doing is you just have these training wheels on them, and you let the training wheels guide the player, and the player will decide if he likes the training wheels or not. They'll usually make it very clear. Benefactor here is a guy who he doesn't like the training wheels, so he tries getting rid of those as soon as possible. He wants to be like, this is my character. This is what my character's going to do. I have no interest. You're trying to make my character into Indiana Jones. I have no interest in archaeological facts or artifacts or anything like that. Like, get out of here with that. I'm more inclined to be interested in technology and flying ships, and then you're like, oh, okay, this guy is interested in mechanisms. And that's the method that I'm referring to. That's the method that I recommend people do, because it's just, in my experience, it works.
Nah, honestly, like I don't like that at all. I'm gonna be honest.
That's fine.
The
What would
best
you
thing,
recommend as an alternative? That's
what
my
I would
question.
recommend as an alternative is your characters providing backstories in session zeros. That's the main thing that I have done in my campaigns, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job of having a good understanding of my players. And I will say I've been very fortunate with having mostly very good players. Again, half the battle. But
Yes.
Yeah, getting an understanding, talking to them about what they expect from their character, what their goals are, and being clear on that. For my campaigns, I generally like my player characters to have a certain goal in mind, have NPCs that matter to them. Why do they matter to them? And usually they do the rest by providing perhaps factions or other various details, mysteries, secrets, those sort of things. I generally heavily encourage those things. And then for the first couple sessions, like I would say for my first opening arc of the story, I don't usually include any sort of character intrigue. I let the players do that themselves. And if they create something out of that and give me something to work with, I will use that. But if not, I will take some time and in those, few weeks that I have to prepare any sort of character arc for them, I will go ahead and do so according to their backstory as well as anything that they've displayed to me in game that I can use.
Okay.
I'll say I'm a good centrist on this one. In between, like I don't do the typecasting thing like you do, but I do try to. I do the whole like give me a backstory, give me a background, let me know as much as possible, and then I'll see how I can meld it within the story or twist it in a way where you still have what you gave me, but it may be something you didn't realize was in there. And then with things with your characters, usually it's is it whatever you give me first, and then as I see you play the character, this is where I go similar to you. It was like, okay, you made your character seem like they're interested in magic, but then you really turn around and start being more interested in weaponry. I now get that, and I would rearrange how I would, work that. So instead of having things with, magic involved around you, I seen that you have more involvement in weapons, then I will try to inch you towards the thing that you show that you have involvement into, or make a melding of the two and see how it goes.
That explains so much about your games. Because that is actually something that kind of irks me with your game. Well, with your one game that I played in. Your other game, not so much. But yeah, that is like my problem with that method is, okay, so my character is interested in magic, but right now he's focusing on weaponry and technology, right? So you're like, oh, okay, let me change his stuff. But that's removing the context of that situation. Like if you're going into a circumstance and your character doesn't have magic, you're like, okay, I want to be magical, but I don't have the money to buy magic items. I don't have money to buy the training for magic items. I don't have the capacity to use magic items because I didn't level up. So I have to rely on what I can. And a sword is reliable. A sword works. So I'm going to default on the sword. And then you as a DM are interpreting as, well, he wants to be a spellcaster, but then he's over here buying tank equipment. That's not, at least in how I'm conceptualizing this, is that's how that plays out.
Well, it all depends. Sometimes you get people like A-Man who constantly switch. But again, that was also my first time DMing realistically. But then you get people like A-Man over here, which is like, okay, I'm gonna just wait a bit and see where you lead me. And sometimes I do that as well. I wait a bit and see where you lead me.
Well, you also have your Gilliams who just refuse to use taunt. you give him taunt, and for whatever reason, he refuses to use it. It's like, oh, this boss is being someone's face in it. It's like, yeah, don't need that. Don't
swing.
Yeah,
I remember hearing that so many times in that campaign.
It's like, come on, use something else. You're a tank. Please, just defend someone.
Yeah, and this goes into a technically different topic, which is like giving the players what they ask for when they say they want to be asked, and you facilitate in that. And it really sucks to do things like that and then watch them not bother with it. It's just like, you asked for this. I can't force you to use it, but I took my time out to do all this for you to just be like, and not even come to me at least why you don't want to use it. No, you feel like you just please just abandon it. You know what I mean?
Well, we had that with Wally and D3. D3 was like his concept. The character idea was an emotionless construct. He didn't have any emotions. He was just this stone cold dude. And he was thinking like, all right, this is going to be a really cool Commander Data like character, I guess. or I'm trying to think of another like Stone Cold Robot, like, Iron Robot thing. And he ended up, after like 2 sessions, he was like, yeah, I don't think I could play this character this way. I want him to have emotions.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
like
like,
I don't mean to shit on him, because like that should be allowed, because like in a sense, like
yes,
like that was obviously a gimmick character that he tried out and he didn't like it, and I'm glad that you gave him the opportunity to do something about it. And I'm glad that you actually, you were probably about to mention this, but you gave him a story to go
yes,
along and get the emotion chip and become that way. And then he went through the other story of adapting to these newly found emotions, going from, understanding them from like a childlike perspective, and going through the motions of understanding all these
yes.
different emotions that he was experiencing.
Well, that was something I was going to say to what you were just saying, Lady Potato. With you saying you don't like the template method. I had seen the one game I was telling you about. The one guy, he wanted to make the meme Kenku character who they do the rattling with the coin sound.
Oh God.
And his entire character concept was just the meme, and he had nothing else. So
Don't
by
allow
like
that in your game. Never.
by like the 3rd session, he's telling the DM, I don't know what to do. Like, he's been beaten into submission by his own actions, that when it's time for combat, he doesn't do anything. When it comes time for socializing and interacting with NPCs, interacting with the other players, like we're sitting around a campfire, his character can't do anything because his entire concept, his entire idea is this meme. And he didn't think about it. He didn't have the forethought to say, this is a bad idea because I have nothing else to do. The game we're going to have tonight, okay, we're Benefactor and I are playing tonight. I am a cleric in that. I've written up prayers to say, okay, I have prayers to say because she's a religious person. She's a religious character. And I want to be able to fit into that role. I want to have a prayer for if someone dies. I want to have a prayer for the morning feast. I want to have a prayer for a nighttime feast. I want to have a prayer for when they're going to bed. If someone wants to pray at their bedside, I have a prayer for if in the event something terrible happens. It's like, oh, blessed Father, please help us through this trying time. That's just something that I do as a storyteller. And that was something I wanted to say, again, going back to the template versus session 0 building and submitting the pages or documents of backstory. I like to work with that stuff with the players. I like to make some of that stuff for the players. But when you get to the player themselves, they have to have the capacity to be that interested in their character. And if they don't have that capacity, this is now looking in hindsight after experiencing several things, like the Kenku meme. It's like, okay, I'm going to just let you do whatever you want. And I'm going to have these story hooks. If you don't want to grab them, that's on you. And I don't know why you're here. That's the way I look at players that come up with these ideas and they don't put any more thought into it. They don't think, oh, I'm going to be a Kenku. I want to do other stuff with this. There's a bunch of fun stuff I can do with it. I'm half tempted to do the meme character just so that I can show how well you can do all kinds of things with it. But it's also boring to me. So it's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't get the meme or joke character kind of thing. I understand some joke character, but when you make that so much a focus where you're kind of left with nothing, yeah, and you realize you have to do that for like over the course of a game, which can go like a year, 2 years. Can you really do that for that long?
Yeah. Like,
those
I'm thinking,
characters are fine. Sorry.
Go on.
I was gonna say those characters are fine for like one shots, or if you're gonna have like short-term campaigns. Sure, it can be kind of funny to do some weird things, or like our goblin campaign that we did where we or even like the Christmas one that Wally ran a few years ago. That was that was a lot of fun. We kind of all played sort of like joke mean characters to some
Yes.
extent. But for long-term campaigns, they just become dull, and like any character that doesn't have any goals outside of just follow the party becomes kind of dull, in my opinion.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is it's like it's a boring character trope, and I don't particularly find it fun. But you're right. If it's in a one shot, it might not be that bad. It might be something interesting to explore. I look at it like if I make a character, if I'm joining someone's campaign, I'm about the story. And that's also why I go with that template method that I talked about, because it's about the story. That's how I look at it, is I'm trying to tell a story. All of these characters, I'm trying to tell a story. Every character at the table, I want them to have a story. And I don't know how that story is going to unfold. I hope they enjoy the story. And that's, I think, why the Cypher game was fun, because I was just trying to tell everyone's story, and Cypher is a fantastic tool or vehicle to let people have their stories. And it's like, if you want something to succeed in Cypher, you can make them succeed automatically. But 5e, it's a 50-50 give and take between the player and the DM. That's also why I don't believe in the adversarial relationship between the DM and players. I hate the adversarial relationship that people talk about as a meme. But that's what I was going to say. I forgot that. There's a thought I wanted to say, and I forgot. I've debated about making the meme bard character that's a slut. I've been debating if I want to do that. My entire life, knowing about like Baldur's Gate, growing up with Baldur's Gate on the computer, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights, Dungeon Siege was another one. I had never known about the slutty bard character trait. I thought bards were just stupid characters that played lutes and musics, and I have no idea why it was even a class or character. And at some point in like 2015, 2016, it was a thing that just popped up everywhere. Everyone wanted to be the slutty bard. And I was like, where did this come from? Like, what is this about? Like, why is everyone playing the slutty bard, or why is everyone hyping the slutty bard? Like, it's a meme, it's funny, but like in a serious campaign, no, just no.
Well, here's the thing. When you are playing those sort of tropes, you have to have impulse control with it. Like, if you are playing like the horny bard or the dumb barbarian, you can't just be constantly horny or constantly dumb. Like, you have to have some restraint. You have to have some substance to your character if you're going to play them long term.
That's a very good point. Excellent.
Because like you can play those characters. You can be, that guy that like maybe he sees a hot chick at the bar and he's like, ooh, well, instead of going on the adventure, I'm going to chase some tail. To do that every now and then, because that could lead to some fun stories, some funny adventures, or some serious ones. But yeah, you have to have some other goal in mind. Like maybe they want to travel the world and learn all of the music or something like that. Some other goal in mind other than just bang everyone.
Hey, sorry, you brought this up in chat with this player. You're right. Every character he makes is literally just a stereotype template of that class. Like, I've never seen someone just so dedicated to that. And just like, why is this your character? Why are all your characters like that? I have to step in and be like, you can't make your character like this. And you know what I mean? So give an example is before you joined Potato, this man was first a blood hunter. An investigative blood hunter.
Oh, you're talking about my first 5e campaign.
Yeah. And trying to be as blood huntery and emo as he possibly could at times. Not even edgy as he could at times.
As a brief background to this is my first time DMing a 5e campaign, and I'm not very good with understanding like the new system, or I wasn't very good at understanding the new system. I came from 3.5, so trying to understand 5e was like, okay, I'm going to stick to what I know. And I was trying to make like supernatural-esque mysteries. You know, just start off very slow, let the players not have them do any like challenge level 5 encounters or anything like that. Not like just a bunch of goblins. It was like, no, I'm going to give them just really easy stuff that they don't need combat skills. I had everyone start out at level 1. Continue about the Blood Hunter.
Yeah, that game was fun. I really wish we did that. That one was more my jam.
I would love to. I would love to do that. I would love to play that again.
You know,
Your first campaign?
Yeah, his first.
My first 5e. Yeah.
I'd love to play that game. I know I wasn't part of the OG crew, but like every time I hear about that game, I'm just so like imagining just Fair, which is the campaign he's talking about, end times prior to its end time. It just sounds so mystical and magical, and I like.
There's a lot of stuff that's going on. There's a lot. Everyone
that.
is doing something to someone everywhere.
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, that one felt much more adventurous. So this kid here, you know, going around trying to be this edgy blood hunter investigator, like I'm gonna find these monsters with his monster hunter companion player. I'm not gonna get into that guy. Was going around and he was just doing very typical things. Just like I'm trying to let me go investigate this. Oh, this must be something mystic. This, mind you, he didn't investigate a damn thing, but that's a whole nother story. That character finally died, and this is where we get into the true just I am the brooding rogue in the corner character. This man makes Clive. And at every chance he got, he would run into a corner and be like, I'm mysterious. And I have a backstory, but I'm not going to tell you that backstory, even you wish to know about it. And it's like, okay, we literally had new players join the game after we finished, we'll say, a dungeon. And this man seriously ran to the corner and just chilled there, watching everything go on. And just like, are you seriously doing this? Are you really just gonna? He literally, Rob, you remember that? It was just like really just finished with Pistoles thing. We were leaving when Zen came in. Literally, as we're coming in with the new players, he literally goes over to the corner edge and chills there, and it's just like, why? Why are you playing like the stereotypical edgelord rogue? Why is this your defining character in everything you play to follow the exact class structure? You know,
see, that's that. I hate to say it, but that's an exception to the rule I just made about Rob's method of the quote unquote, as I call it, typecast. That's a character I might do that to, in the sense that like they're literally not giving you anything else. And the things they are, supposed to have, they're not doing anything towards those goals or towards those backstories or not mentioning it.
It's not even just that. It's not even that. That's the part, though. They're not mentioning. So we are a group of players, right? There has to be a time where you're going to. It has to be something that triggers you to talk or mention something. If another player, asks you about something because of a certain incident thing that could have some relativity to you to talk about your backstory, I feel that as a good player, you don't have to expound everything. You don't have to go and say everything to your backstory, but give something, give tidbits, let it slowly fester and grow. Give those players an interest in your character through the little thing you did. Best example was Tamiz and Sylvanas. You talking about your elf village made Tamiz village, so I'm an elf. Oh, this and this and this. We talked, we got into magic, and then our relationship started from magic and then built from there. We want to get to know each other's backstories more and more. Same when we got into everybody else coming into the crew slowly. The problem I had with the two people I originally played with in Rob's first one was they refused to, if they had anything, talk about their backstory. One player I literally was like just trying to have a dialogue with and was like, so, you're a tiefling, huh? Which one of your parents is the infernal lineage? And the dude was just like, that's none of your business. I don't go around asking you a bunch of questions. I'm saying like, I'm really saying like, I wish you would ask me something. You know nothing about my character. For all you know, I can be the big bad. You know nothing.
Yeah, my literal favorite line, as in my not favorite line, is when a character shows up and the literal first thing they do is they say, I sit and observe. It's like, just ask something, because without asking questions, without having conversations, without having intrigue, you learn nothing about your party and you don't form relationships. Or if you've established a relationship in your past, you're not really showing it.
Yep. And that is something that I don't get with people. And I've been in several campaigns now. And this is where I'm not quite sure if I blame the DM or if I blame the player, because I see both sides making huge mistakes. Huge. A player will give a DM a lot of advantages. Like, hey, here's a great plot hook. Here's a great story idea. Here's a great thing to do. And the DM doesn't do anything with it. And it's befuddling to me. It genuinely makes you say, what is wrong with this player as a DM? Now, not everyone has the conceptual ideas of storytelling like me. That's my ego talking. But to me, that's like something that is pretty important if a player is making it front and center to you. If they're making it very obvious, hey, I'm looking for my brother. Hey, I'm looking for my sister. Or I'm looking for a cure for this poison to take back home because my town is suffering from a plague. I was telling these friends of mine about a DC Comics story idea I had. And I blew them away with how fast I just made up a story with just a few elements. I just plucked a few concepts and ideas. And we were talking about multiverse theory and how multiverse theory is hated on by several people. I'm not going to go into that, but it's hated on by several people because it's seen as like a writing crutch for storytelling. It's like anything happens. Okay, think in D&D terms. Think you do something bad. You do something and a player character gets killed. And you want that player to come back to life. So you're like, okay, we're going to do a multiverse merge or an alternate universe where that character is still alive. And we're going to bring them into the campaign. It's effectively lazy writing. If that's what all you do, if every time someone dies, it's just, okay, we go into another universe, we grab that character and we bring them here, and therefore they didn't die. Everything's all fine and good. And so I was telling these guys, I was like, whereas you just take a few of these elements, like we use death as an example. I was like, say someone fires a death ray, and the death ray is so violent and so destructive, it creates a ripple between this world and the realm of death. And it just happened that this thing is so destructive and disruptive to the natural order of things. It created this like web in the realm of death. And you'd see the spirit of a fallen comrade trapped in this web. And I was like, yeah, that's a way you could bring someone back from the dead. It's creative. You don't have to do this multiverse reset. You don't have to explain away a dumb decision that someone did or something. It's creative. And I was like, I'm not saying even under that circumstance, that's storytelling method. You don't have to have the character get brought back to life. You could just have that character's cameo. And if one of the player members or one of the story characters didn't get to say goodbye to this character who died, they have their opportunity there to say, hey, it was good to see you one last time, and I'm glad I could help send you off into the netherworld and, rest at peace. But that's something, like I was saying, I don't see DMs coming up with creative ideas for their stories. I don't see them coming up with creative ideas to execute and use player backgrounds. So I look at like, okay, you write your whole background, you send me this gigantic paragraph of all this stuff, and the DM doesn't use it. The DM has like no way of hooking it in. The player has no way of hooking it in themselves. They might occasionally reference it like, oh, my dwarf doesn't drink beer. Okay. That's all you're going to give me is just, oh, I don't drink beer. I'm a dwarf. Like, Give me something more. Give me something juicier.
I'm agreeing with you on points like that. Which is why I not to make it because he was in that campaign, but this is why out of everybody's backstory, I love Carmen's the most with Amara. I was like, this will have a serious implication on a lot of things. And I'm glad she gave it to me. I can work with this, incorporate it. All you got stuff I had incorporated. And like I said, it was supposed to be. I told everybody else. I think I told you this before, Rob. Like it was supposed to be a sort of small mini theme behind it of things like not everything is as it seems with what you think you know. So for a lot of characters that they thought they knew were right was not really as how they thought it was. It was a whole long thing. I'm not gonna go too deeply into it on this podcast type thing, but I agree. If a player is giving you the backstory, you as the DM should find a way to work with them, incorporate it, use that, move things, thing like you did with Tamai is a good example. You did not have that Elven Kingdom stuff, everything involved. You saw what I gave you. You worked with. You did great thing with it. I gave you what I want for a general outline, which goes into a whole nother topic of giving a DM a general outline and then giving a DM like 5-10 pages of stuff, which is like I just know I'm doing all this.
There's a difference between an outline and then creative liberty, and it's a balancing act. I really wish you got to see the Elven City because it looks great, but someday maybe.
Yeah, someday, right?
Who knows? Maybe we'll see it. And honestly, like I think what that comes down to is going back to your point, Benefactor, is setting the expectation as the DM of saying, "This is what I expect from my players." Like, that could be things like what level you're starting at and what that implies in the world. Like maybe you're a 3rd level character, but you're someone who is more powerful by far than an average person. Setting those expectations, or saying that you're starting in jail or you're starting as friends, or setting the expectation of what the world could be like. And I feel like providing those basic structures prior to your campaign or when you're onboarding players is very important to provide them so that they could create players that are appropriate, as well as even setting like, hey, I don't want a 10-page backstory. I only want 2 pages. Or I really like giving my characters a sort of template to sort of use as far as information I would like to know from them prior to the campaign.
That's very smart.
Yeah, that's something I actually did with the current one I'm in with the tabletop game that I'm making. I had like 4 questions. I'm like, these are the 4 dominant questions I want answered for your character, for the story and game and everything. Anything else you add is fine, but these are the 4 dominant things that I personally need to know. And going on to the campaign of Lady Potato here, I wish she continues. I really love playing in Jealous, though I didn't like one of the players in their player character.
Yeah, I would actually pick that campaign up again. I've thought about restarting it and like revamping some things because there were some things I didn't like about it, but I think that overall I had a really good recipe for something really good.
You should definitely do that. Definitely. I had fun with it, but
yeah,
any opportunity to play Hal Steinbearer, I'll take.
That's 2 of us that had fun with it. It was great. Let's say, not counting the beef that I have with another player and all, I thoroughly enjoyed it and would have liked to go forward with that.
And I do want to clarify for audience members, okay? What he's saying, like beef with another player, he means a player, not a character. It got a little personal there, and that's something that as DMs, it's a balancing act of not getting involved in players and their personal issues with each other. And also, you don't want to get in the middle of that because from your perspective, it's not relevant to the game. But also, you don't want to get into it because you're essentially friends with both people. And
you're supposed to be unbiased as well. You're supposed to be a force of just trying to be objective instead of, having a personal bias. So when they're having a beef, you just kind of have to let them work it out unless it crosses a certain line.
Right. And your method of handling that should be, at least I highly recommend, is it impacting the game in the way of stopping the game from progressing? If they're arguing after the game, so be it. That's not on game time. If they're arguing during the game and they're calling each other names and slurs or whatever they're doing, that's when you as the DM have to say, okay, timeout. We're playing right now. We all only have so much time of the day to play. Let's play and not linger on what someone said. Like, let's get this going. And if you guys want to call it here, if you want to stop, we'll stop. But let's keep going. Okay, let's just stick with it. You know, that's something that you as a DM have to weigh that. You have to determine and read the people. I've been a part of games where the player's problem was the GM's girlfriend. And
Oh God.
that's not a good situation to be in at all. Like you don't want to be in that situation.
I feel sorry for you there.
But yeah, that's a game, like that's something I wanted to just clarify. It's like there's a difference between having an in-character conflict where characters have clashing ideas and clashing motivations, and the players having an issue with each other. Because I've heard of one game where this one player would throw temper tantrums if he wasn't the hero who saved the day. So the DM would literally, like the DM would come up with an idea like, okay, here's Superman's moment to enter. And Superman's supposed to swoop in and save the day. But then you have Batman over here who's whining and crying that he isn't the guy who's to save the day. And so the DM then ends up switching it. So it's like, all right, Superman gets to fly in, but he basically distracts it so that Batman can deliver the final punch. Like, I've heard of these stories, and I'm just like, why is the DM doing that? Like, the DM...
They have no backbone.
Right. Like, the DM should not be doing that. If you're a DM doing that, you're going to have all of your players get upset. And the only reason why your players are at the table with you is because you're their only DM in town. Like, you're the only game in town. And if you're playing a Monopoly, that's fine and good until your players snap and say, I'm done. I'm not going to play with you anymore, because you have no backbone. And your job is to help facilitate the story in a neutral manner. And that's going back to what we were saying earlier about evil DMs. I don't subscribe to the evil DM idea. You know, the DM is there just to tell the story. The DM is there to help narrate, okay, you decided to pull the lever on a trap door. Here's the consequences for doing that. At least that's my image and my projection of a DM as a storyteller. You guys probably, I'm pretty sure, have different perspectives of that. You know, you guys have your ideas of DMing. If you guys want to go through that, if you guys want to say what does DMing mean to you? Lady Potato, you lead us on this.
Sure. I think being a DM is a lot of some of the things you already said, but I think that being the DM is like I said previously, also being sort of a neutral balance in the force as far as trying to be unbiased between your players. You're responsible for ensuring that everything is fair, everything's just, no cheating's going on, anything like that. You're also responsible for, of course, the main villain, the main conflicts. You're in charge of setting those conflicts, and you're basically the one who's stacking the dominoes, and your players are the ones that are deciding which pile to knock over. And you basically have to sort of write in circles in a way that the story keeps going no matter what your players do, so that it feels like a live world. But going back to that analogy of, I guess, the dominoes, it's just you have to be flexible. You have to some extent, you can plan so much and try and do as much as you can, but at the end of the day, it's sort of up to your players to decide your story. That's kind of how I like to do it, because I like to give my players agency over the story and over their characters. That being said, the dominoes, you're still the one deciding, in a sense, where they land. You're still deciding where you put them to begin for the pile to drop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're the narrator. Your job is to help guide the players, but then the players react with it. You're the ruler. Okay,
Yes.
you make the rules, and you determine, okay, you're a judge, basically. You know, the whole rules lawyer thing. You're a judge. You're the one who says, okay, this rule applies here. This rule doesn't apply here. Okay. That's what you're saying, basically.
Yeah, basically, I don't want to say that we're in charge of the story per se, because that's sort of everyone's responsibility. That's not just on the DM, that's on the players providing to the story and telling their stories. But you're also responsible for making the story believable in a sense, because you need to provide the background.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Benefactor, what is a dungeon master to you?
Tiring. Now let me know. You guys got really wordy. I'm gonna see if I can keep it straight and simple. I don't want to like use words like weaving webs. I like to use the phrase labyrinth maker. I made a labyrinth. It is on you guys how you wish to traverse and get through that labyrinth. Now there are certain rules and restrictions to the labyrinth, like you can't just fly over the labyrinth, but you might be able to drill through the labyrinth. But that might have a consequence. There's things in the labyrinth that are there with you. How you interact with those things in said labyrinth will decide what happens later on in that labyrinth. That's how I see DMing. You made a labyrinth for your players to go into, and it's on them how they wish to traverse and get out of that labyrinth and complete that labyrinth. You know what I mean? There's many twists and turns and things you have to do as a labyrinth maker for them. But at the end of the day, it's always on them how they want to traverse and move the labyrinth. Which the great example was something that got my cousin really upset was in my campaign where they have full autonomous and direction on where to go, north, south, east, or west. Pick a cardinal direction to go in, and you will find something in a sense. Where the players in the labyrinth, they're right there. Their choice is just which direction to go, and they choose not to. Then it's on them. I don't really like forcing or believing that you should push players through the labyrinth in the direction you want. Sadly, that campaign showed why I don't like it and what happens when you're kind of like stuck, forced to. But that's how I see DMing is. I made a labyrinth. Have fun with it. Find your way to it and see what you get.
Yeah. Well, something you brought up was you're like, hey, here's the labyrinth. You have an idea what the rules are, but as experience with your games, you don't know what the rules are until you try them.
Yes, and I like that because that adds to the exploration and the mystery of your world.
Yes. And I mean, I get that all the time in my Star Wars games where I get players like, oh, can I do this? And I just look at them like, you tell me. Like, you can technically do that. And I'm sorry, they'll say, can I do that? And I'll give them an answer like, yes. But they'll be like, hey, what would happen if I did this? And that's the difference, is the can I versus what would happen. When they do the what would happen, my job as a DM is to not answer that question.
Yeah, you don't.
My job is to say, well, what do you think?
I wouldn't even answer that. I wouldn't even say a word. So I just look at them like, I don't. Most I'd be like, I don't know. That's what I do to my players now when they ask me a particular question, which is like, I don't know. You tell me, or I don't know what's gonna happen. What do I look like?
Well, it's like it was during that one boss fight in the End Times campaign where Mongoose was like, he looks to me and he rolled a tactics check and was like, how do we beat this fight? And I'm like, I don't have the answer to that. He got a nat 20 and he's looking at me to give him the answer of how to win the fight. And it's like, I didn't plan to, how you guys, like, I create the encounter. I didn't create the way to defeat the encounter. That's for you guys to come up with. I came up with all these ideas to abilities and how they're going to use them and the rules to the fight. You guys have to come up with a solution for the fight. And so when he threw that question at me, I'm like, that's like nowhere in the vicinity of questions I expected to be asked at all. But here he is throwing that question at me. And I'm like, all right, if you want to defer to the DM how to win, good luck. And so he was upset that I was like, hey, you didn't include this ability in their repertoire. And it's like, well, because you didn't see the ability. I can only tell you what, or repeat back to you what your character has seen. You know, what your character would already know based on what they have seen. You know, I'm not going to just give you their character sheet so you can see everything on their character sheet.
You already know, even for our DM, I wasn't a person that was big on asking the DM for information like that. So
No, that's dumb. That's like super metagaming.
Yes.
And my biggest pet peeve is metagaming. I can't stand it. It's not something I enjoy doing, and I've been in so many groups where people will, they'll not even be there, and they'll start offering you suggestions on what your character should do, and it's like, what are you doing? You're in a way you're taking away the agency of that other person, because they're not really getting to do most likely what they want to do, especially if they're a very dominant personality, as these people often are.
Yeah. And that's something that I know as well, is with taking control of other people's character. It's like we had this last week in this game that Benefactor and I are in. It's on my turn. I'm playing as a healer, so I don't want to use my spells for anything. There's really nothing for me to do. It's us versus 2 psychic plants. It's like a party of 6 or 7. Yeah, it's 6. It's 6 of us against 2 psychic plants, and the psychic plants aren't doing anything. So there's no agency. There's no emergency, nothing. So it's my turn, and somehow we get on the topic of no one did. I asked him, do we know anything about these creatures? And he said, no one did a history check. You can do a history check if you like. And another player chimed in and said, I'll do a history check. And then he rolled. And I'm over here like, I'll do a history check as well. But as a player, I'm thinking, DM, this is my turn. Like, you should have stepped in and said, hey, what are you doing? It's not your turn to roll. Like, it's on your turn you can roll. Now, there are some instances where as a DM, I would allow all of the players to roll, but that's not one of them. Like, that's absolutely not one of them. It's like it's in the middle of combat and your character is just gonna have an epiphany of historic knowledge about this thing you're fighting. Like, that's a bunch of horse shit. Like, no.
I have a lot of things I can say about that game we're going to go into tonight.
Well, is there any of it that you feel is relevant to storytelling?
Storytelling, no. DMing, yes.
All right, well, let's explore that then. What would you say DMing wise could be better?
So DMing wise, the pacing, especially if you're gonna bring new players in, could have been a lot better. That was really, really horrible. We spent about an hour waiting to be introduced.
About 46 minutes.
So yeah, about an hour.
We were online earlier. I was online at least an hour early. You got on, I want to say, about half hour early. So, your perception might be, oh, we were waiting for an hour. But in my experience of gaming, even in my games where I'm DMing, it takes about 30 minutes to introduce new players to the party, and that's if it's in a non-combat scenario, it's about 30 minutes. If it's a combat scenario, typically you can just drop them right in and it's fine. The players are like, what the hell? But but continue on. What?
Well, the reason why I say that, because how he did it was, I think I would have found a better solution to do that. Instead of having us wait for the 45 minutes and then have them do a billboard search for a recruitment or whatever he did. I think I went to P or something in between there. I don't remember. I kind of just done at that point for that part.
Yeah, our characters had placed an ad on the town billboard looking for work, and he gave us the opportunity. You were AFK at the time, but he gave us an opportunity to say, what was our ad? Now I had to prompt him for that because he was like, oh, there's a healer here, and he tried using my backstory to articulate what my character's advertisement was. So I chimed in. I said over the chat, I was like, well, it would be logical to have the player whose advertisement they posted, they would be the one to tell you what they put out there. And all he had for you was he just kept saying barbarian. There's this barbarian. There's this barbarian who.
Yeah, no, I just stopped caring. You told me, keep calling me barbarian. I'm like, I don't even care anymore.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're not a barbarian in the world. You're, a thief, or
I'm a gladiator.
a gladiator, right? You're not
Right.
your class. You are something that fits in the world. You're a knight. You're not a paladin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I left it alone. I just did not care. To me, though, I would have had it be more while they're shopping, depending on where they're at, they run into X. Maybe you bump into, you see this lady here, yada yada. Get them to naturally have a flowing of a conversation.
Yes.
I did the same thing for Boone when you guys were in that dungeon. Boone had a particular location that you guys were going to run into him in, where it's like, okay, you ran into the new character. You guys, like, you see a guy trapped in there that needs help, save him. New party member. I try to make it where the pacing makes sense, and you also don't have the other player or players waiting forever to be introduced. You know what I mean? That's terrible pacing.
It's like I told you in PMs for that game. I told you I want to go shopping for potions because as a new character, you don't start out with potions. And then the DM was like, "Here, have 3 potions." I'm like, "Well, if you would have given me 3 potions, you could have had me in the shop, like right there, buying them."
Yeah.
And the DM could have just said, "All right, well, you just bought them, and as you bought them, these travelers come walking in, these adventurers. You notice they're exotic, they're different looking, they don't look like anyone else in the town. It's like there's your hook, there's your ability to scoop them up and bring them in."
Then we go on to one. I shouldn't blame too much on DM, more on the players, which I feel bad for DM because I've had this issue as well, where you also understood this part. We was in the wagon or whatever going to the mountain shit thingy, and again, sorry, language. Where like we have no idea what's going on, and we're sitting in this carriage with them having a perfect chance to role play. They tell us nothing. We know nothing. Oh yeah, this dude named this dude named Nix is telling us to go there. Okay.
Yep.
Who's
Yep.
Nix?
Yep.
That was the man in my head.
Oof.
What? That's the best you get? Some man in your head? No, nothing about like why you guys are on this journey. Why is this man sending y'all on this journey? No, just nothing told to us. So we're just with them. I have no motivation or whatsoever. I literally don't even give a flying F. Like legitimately, that's why I'm like, I'm giving this session 2 to see how this goes, but I'm probably gonna drop. I'm probably gonna drop this continues. Because I said my other issue was the combat thing with if you have a player that especially you wanted them to come in to be like this tank role or something, and you have a player that's actually trying to facilitate that, and he's standing in front of a creature, even if he wasn't tanking, you have a player standing in front of another creature that is a threat to that creature. Why would that creature completely ignore the threat in front of him to go around him, still next to him, mind you, but go around him to target somebody else? I was like, why am I here then? Why did I do this for?
Yep.
0 cents. Nothing.
You know what I mean?
That's just. I don't even know what that is. Like, I'm trying to think of like how they would justify that, because that just doesn't make any sense. Either they're like, maybe trying to distribute points of damage to other party members, but that just doesn't make sense.
He did it. I brought up the first time he did, because first he didn't move with the creature. He just did it. I'm like, I'm in the way. Can he even see? I'm a giant toad. Can he even see the guys behind me? Good point. Moves him. I'm like, oh my god.
I was gonna say that whole thing. It's like I've been there. I've seen DMs do that, and what it is they're trying to create urgency. That's a storytelling mechanic. They're trying to scare the players into, okay, this player succeeded in their saving throw. This other player succeeded in their saving throw, and he's trying to add like hype to it, like, oh, they succeeded, and it's like, this is the first encounter. We're all fresh for the fight. There is no fatigue. There is no tiredness. There's no spell slots even spent. Like, this is nothing. This is nothing. Nothing has happened. And you're trying to do some sort of like tactical genius here. This is not what I would have done for this fight. I would have tested the party in this fight. I would have had it where it's like, okay, 5 orcs attack. What does everyone do? And you pay attention to what they do in that first encounter so that you know how they'll react and how they'll handle it. Either they're discoordinated, discombobulated. That's fine. That's good. That's information you need. Or they're really coordinated and they know what they're doing. That's information you need. And that's what you should do with that first fight. And if you're looking at the fight right now, I don't know what data you're getting, Benefactor, but the data I'm getting is all of these players are just one step away from just I attack. And that's all they'll do. That's it. Just I attack. Okay, give me an attack roll. That's how this party looks to me. It's just everyone attacks all the time. They do nothing else.
I believe it. I just was so frustrated that I got ignored like that I just zoned out. I have a tendency when getting frustrated at something like that, I just tend to be like, all right, I'm just here now. I'm just, which you've seen, I'm just like done with something. I'll just be done with it at that point, and then just be gone. I'll mentally be gone, and that's how I'll mentally check. That's why the mini game's over. I left. I was mentally checked out. I was like, that was.
Well, that's the advantage of playing a barbarian. That's one of the things I like playing when I was talking about Hal. Mongoose said to me about Christmas, playing a game for Christmas. He was like, do you want to play Hal or do you want to play someone else? And I was like, look, I will take every opportunity to play Hal because that is such a fun character to play. I'll play him again.
Hell, you might get the chance to. You guys got me really considering that.
Do it.
Please.
Do it.
I would love to go and play my sexy vampire.
Well, it could be quite fun. Maybe it could be like, us and a couple other people. I probably I don't know. I am just scorned and done with playing with large groups. It's too chaotic. And I find that players tend to have more fun when there's, I guess, less people. Well, bad as that sounds, 4 is ideal.
I'll say that's a good time to go into. What player party size do you think is best for a campaign? On average, I know some people may say, depends, but on average, what do you think is the best party size of players to have?
On average, I would say 4. Just based on the fact that when you have 4, you have someone covering at least each role. And you might have a little bit of overlap on, let's say, your DPS, if you're going to follow the main 3 sort of categories of tank, DPS, healer. But you get all of your bases covered, so everyone in the party feels like they have a particular role, something they bring to the table. And even if in parties they don't decide to do that, if there's parties where, there's people who are playing the same class or something, there's still enough room for them to each have their own little niche and not get too stale. Whereas I find when you have 6+, that sort of gets meddled down. People are feeling like maybe they're getting stepped on, they're not getting enough spotlight, things get very chaotic, that sort of thing. I find that those problems tend to arise more in larger groups.
Cool. How about you, Jack?
I was gonna say I like a mixture of them. I tend to lean towards bigger groups. I enjoy bigger groups, bigger parties. But I am of the opinion 6 is the upper limit. You're really, really pushing it, going beyond 6. If you have more people, if you have more than 6 people, that's great because you have substitutes for, okay, someone can't make it this week, we can swap them out.
Yeah.
But if you have a smaller group, it's a lot more manageable. It's a lot fun to be able to just, okay, I'm rotating between these characters and I'm letting them do stuff. The problem I have, and this is the problem I have with almost every game I play, is as a DM, is getting the players to split up. In every game I've played, the players absolutely refuse to split up.
I love splitting up as a player because it gives you a chance to do something new.
I do too.
And honestly, sorry, I just wanted to circle back to what we were just talking about playing in smaller parties. A point that I kind of remembered as you were talking was that in smaller parties, you get a chance to bond better with your teammates, and when you bond more with your player group as a player, that allows for a better game, better communication, better role play, better everything.
Yes, I agree.
So you get that those bonds a lot easier in a smaller group, whereas if you're going between 5 or 6 people, that can be a little bit harder to obtain that level of intimacy unless you're playing with the pre-established group.
Okay. Well, just do the whole thing or the
What
whole
was your
topic.
answer? I was curious what your
Yeah.
answer was.
Oh no, I'm gonna do the whole topic of everything y'all just said. I have a comment for everything there. Again, I look like the centrist guy. For both reasons, I say 5. Realistically, that's also what I'm doing now with my game that I'm making, my tabletop RPG I'm making based on Final Fantasy. Even though it was technically designed for 4, I do have a leeway to do it 5. Right now, I have 5 players. The reason why I say 5 is like how Jack said. Someone's absent too. You still have a good set of players to really be able to get stuff done. You know what I mean? Where sometimes with 4, you could end up with like 2 people missing and not being able to complete it. With 1, you're still good, but with 2 people, you're like, okay, I gotta call it. With 6, if you have everybody show up, it's kind of daunting at times. Especially if you want to do like Jack said at the party split up. Now I can answer the whole party split up thing. Why you don't find a lot of players do that. They have been conditioned within D&D never to split the party. You can find a lot of videos talking about that too. My thing is, I don't have a problem with the party splitting, but they have to have it within their objective to meet again. I don't want them just splitting and we're just gonna split to the 5 wins. I said 5. Sorry, split to the 4 wins for the 4 wins' sake.
Yeah.
If you guys are going to split, it has to be for a purpose. It has to be a reason. It has to be like you guys are going to eventually rejoin. Now, can I run a campaign with them all over the place? Yes, but it's going to turn into an issue where some players are now sitting there twiddling their fingers and, waiting for their turn, going through the mass of different players that have to go through their turn. Or we could also end up with a similar situation that we had in your campaign, Jack, where we went into the past, where 2 of us got our stuff done in 15 minutes and we're sitting here waiting like an hour and a half, falling asleep. No, sorry, not falling, fell asleep, waiting for our turn to finally come and arrive.
Yep.
You run into that issue when splitting up as well, where people that are more organized get the job done quicker. And now they're stuck waiting for the rest of the group to get their, and no offense to you, Late Potato, get their stuff together, and they're kind of all either horsing around or just not really doing coordination and stuff like that, and just hours go by.
Yeah.
We're just like, I could have went and done something else in that time. I'm not gonna wait this long.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk about that earlier when we were talking about templates and things like that. I am so sick and tired of players who are do-nothing players.
Oh, I know. They're just like, I drink.
And they're the opposite of the do-everything player, the player who wants to do everything. That guy I was just talking about earlier of I'm Batman and I want to be the guy who delivers the killing blow. If I'm not the guy, I'm going to throw a whining fest. All right, they're the opposite. It's I'm going to just sit here and drink. It's like, why? Why did you put it on your agenda for D&D to show up and do nothing? Why? Why is that something you wanted to do? Like, participate, do something, engage with everyone, engage with the DM. Okay, like in my Star Wars game, the most interacted with thing in the entire game is spot. Because every 5 seconds, someone's like, I do a spot check. And it's like, do something else. Like, don't get paralyzed into doing this one thing all the time. Switch it up. Do something different. Do something new. And, Potato, you saw that with the DC Vertigo game where several characters opted to do nothing.
Or they went into robot mode and just did the same thing over and over and over again. Even though, it may have been unsuccessful, they would just try it again and try it again and try it again. Even if they were rolling high, just try it again. And I can understand some people would like to role play the aspect sometimes of their character trying because they believe this is the only thing that can happen. But when you're doing that all the time, that's just laziness. That's just I don't know. I just wish people would use their other abilities sometimes. Because you
Yeah,
give them to them. These people had lots of abilities. There's lots of things you can do. Yeah. Um,
yeah,
especially in a game like Vertigo where you can decide what to do, and if you make it happen, you can make it happen within reason.
yeah. And like I said before, I had for my Star Wars game, I had a few players that were interested in joining that, and I look forward to Lady Potato you jumping in on that. But these other players, I'm sort of like, they're do nothing players. They love Star Wars, they love doing stuff, but it's like,
They're sitting around for the show. There's different types of players, and like I've seen like videos that um kind of highlight this. There was one in particular when you were talking about mongoose earlier called the scientist type, but another type is the ones that are literally just there to witness the story, witness what you've created, as well as the dominant players who are going to drive the story, what they're doing. That's what they enjoy.
yeah. And it's a good DM tip. Uh, have something for everyone to do.
Yes.
So, if you have a rogue, make sure there's something to lockpick, because they're playing the rogue to lockpick. If they're a rogue, have something that they can steal, because they're a rogue, they want to steal. If they're a paladin, they're there to smite the evil foe and be the beefy boy who's able to take the hits.
Mhm.
So you got to have some evil foe for them to smite and have some beefy boy that wants to smack them. It's
Yeah.
like that's why people are playing the characters that they're playing. But like I said, going back to the do nothing players, they're something that I am just sick and tired of dealing with. Those are people that it's like, if you're not going to contribute, you're not going to bring something to the table, you're not going to be interacting with the rest of the party, you're not going to be interacting with the story, you're not going to be interacting with the DM. I don't want you in my game. You're fine. You're fine for new DMs. You're fine for DMs that don't know what they're doing. You're great experience for them because you're not maintenance. You're very low maintenance to them.
Yes.
But if you're going to be in one of my games, I want you to bring some flair. I want you to bring some attention to yourself. Not the opposite. The opposite is I want to do everything. I want to roll all the history checks. I want to roll all the lock picking checks. I want to be the one casting spells. Hey DM, I know it's not my turn, but I'm still going to ask, can I do this roll? Even though it's not my turn. Like, those players are ones that get on my nerve too. Those players I just have no tolerance for as well, or I'm getting to the point of having no tolerance.
I'm about to say, you definitely have one that's playing in both of your games, bro. I don't know.
In Star Wars, I technically have two. But it's a balancing act. It's great because the mechanics of the games, depending on which game, the mechanics of the game can work to your advantage of stopping players from overextending. It's just you as a DM have to have a backbone. You have to be able to put your foot down and say, no, you can't roll on this. Like, this doesn't apply to you. Stop trying, please.
Yeah, but some people don't really understand or learn that. You stop them on that one, and they're gonna just try the same thing again on another thing, and then again and again and again till someone gets frustrated with them, and then has to just really just put that anger out on them, like, yo, you need to stop. You know what I mean? This is becoming annoying and a problem. This is one of those things that end up having with problem players. As DM, yeah, you really have to talk to them, both for the do nothing and the ones that want to do everything. You really got to talk to them and be like, okay, listen, with the do nothing plays, like, listen, I'm glad you came and play. You're here, but you're not actually playing. You're running around the starship back and forth with no clear clue what you want to do. You said you want your character to do X and Y. I don't understand why you're not doing that. You have till this session to figure that straight. I'll have to ask you to step out. You're not really contributing. Is becoming a problem. The same with the do everything play. You got to really some straight. Like, listen, you can't. You have to let other players do things, and you can't just constantly interject yourself into everything that everyone's doing or trying to like roll something that you clearly can't even actually roll into somebody else. Let someone else do this that they're specialized in while you get to do the thing you're specialized in. And it's really hard. I know some people as DMs are really afraid to really talk to their players, sit them down, and really give them that harsh words and whatnot. But those harsh words need, because the DM don't do it, there's gonna be someone in that group that's gonna do it. And I know, because I'm usually that someone. Like, if it gets to a point of the problem, like the DM is not saying something, I will say something. Because like it's starting to irk my nerves. So, which you've seen happen on more than one occasion is Jack, and you've seen it happen before, Lady Potato. It is not handled. I'm the type of person that will then put it into my own hands and handle it. But I get that you're frustrated, and then there's some players you just need to work with and see what they're what's wrong with them. I'm trying to figure that out with a player in one of my games now, and how to really get him more involved. He's seemingly flustered at what to do, and it's starting to be where it's just like you're not really doing anything, and I'm more like skipping your turn than anything. And it's for me and other players, it's becoming a little bit of a worry thing, because they want to interact with him. They want him to interact with them and everything, and then the NPCs is like he's kind of just avoiding everything, and it's like is there a problem? So that's my thing on that. Like I said, I plan on talking to my player very soon about that issue, because it's like it is a very bad problem right now going on. Okay, seems like I'm missing out on something here.
No.
No, you're not missing out on anything. Sorry, we were just discussing some possibilities for the future.
Like I say, it seems like I'm missing out on something. I was like,
You just gotta look in chat, man. But
Well, I was gonna say, all right, so that's how I would handle something like this. That's how Benefactor would handle something like this. I want to know how Lady Potato is going to handle something like this, because we've had similar circumstances in your game where you've had players who are, let's say, problematic in some way or shape or form.
Mhm.
And yeah, when you and I have talked about it in private, it's the impression I got from you is that you aren't the best at confrontation.
I would say I'm not. It's something that I've actively worked towards. But all right. Well, in general, how just going based off of the example that we kind of discussed already today, when we were talking about the player that the Benefactor was having issues with, that one, for example, I chose to kind of sit back and um, just let them kind of hash it out, because it wasn't, in my opinion, getting to a level. If I should have interjected, please tell me now. But from my perspective, it didn't seem like an instance where I should have interjected, because that seemed like an issue between you guys personally. But actually, you know what? I will say that I probably should have asked them to take it outside a game, but it was also one of those things that they were both really heated. So you know what? Maybe I should have just thrown them into a private chat to just let them simmer out, let them hash it out. If you guys obviously need to talk about it, but the three of us should have just. I should have plunked you two down, and we should have just hashed it out then.
No, but remember
Called for a
that
sidebar.
issue.
Yes.
That issue though. Hold on, but that issue started in character.
It
right?
did start in character, and then he decided to take it out of character.
Yeah, that was the issue. Like, in character was fine. Even Jack here was involved in it. We had thing is when he took it out of character and started slinging words he shouldn't be just slinging at people.
Like
it
metagamer.
became
Yeah,
my
that's right.
issue. All right, it wasn't metagamer. He called me a murder hobo. Especially with the pure fact that I was the only one in that entire combat that didn't even attack. You know what I mean? And then got into this whole slinging insult thing. It's like, bro, you can't even come at me. You got the one that did that, and you're coming at me over this nonsense. Like, if he kept it in character and didn't go and insult me, I'd have been fine. That was where I draw the line. I don't do that. You don't do that to me. Nah. We at that point, me and you is eye to eye. Like I don't.
And well, that's where I would again bring us back to Lady Potato. What do you think you if not in that circumstance, not in that situation? Think about the situations you've seen me and Benefactor here in. Things that we've done that maybe you disagreed with, how we ruled with handling a player and what the player did. You might have said, that was really, you should have kicked that player out, or you should have reprimanded that player, or I think you did the right thing. Like, can you find yourself in a capacity to do something like that? Because like I said, like, for the audience, okay, I can be a pretty strict and straightforward DM. The Benefactor can be a pretty straight and straightforward DM. Like if you're not getting that impression from us, if a player pulls some bullshit in our game, we're going to call them out on it and say, no. Lady Potato, she has a softer approach. She's able to say, okay, here's like I've seen in your game, you're like, here's some rules. Like you can't absolutely, like, this rule they cannot cross. And some players have tried crossing them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will stop them if they are absolutely doing something that's just like no.
Yes.
And I will say that I have grown a bit more of a backbone than I did back then, because that was probably 2 years ago now.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Hopefully, when we go round 2, maybe we'll see a much firmer backbone. But yeah.
Well, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with a player who, even if they're not directly, they're just subtly trying to manipulate you as a DM? Either subtly, or they're just being a brute and they're trying to force you into submission. You have that aggressive player. How do you think you would handle it? Or a high maintenance player, even a player who just wants to do everything. They want to roll for everything.
Okay, well, first I'd like to start with the bully player, because these are two kind of separate issues, and they can there's going to be different ways to handle them. The player that's, for example, sort of bullying their way in, or
Hello? Okay, I get kicked out? Yeah, I did. Says I'm in the show, but no one's here.
Okay. I don't know what happened there.
Okay, so I just wish you just cut off my way, right? Okay, so it's
great.
There we go. I had to add you to the yeah, we dropped you and I.
Okay, where did I cut off, just so that I'm not...
You're saying the two players are different. There's the bully player, and then there's the high maintenance player.
The high maintenance player,
and there's also the subtle player.
The subtle player. Yeah, those things are, I guess, 3 ways of handling them. The subtle player is probably the most difficult, in my opinion, because the subtle player isn't doing things overtly that you can call them out on. They're going to be trying to do more underhanded maneuvers, or they're going to be doing, like, let's say, influencing other players. I would say that the way to stop that is to try and, I guess, call them out on that and say, hey, like, let's say how I mentioned telling other players what to do. They'll be like, you should go and do this. You say, well, you shouldn't tell them to do that because they are, they're in another area. You don't have any way of contacting them. Like, that's metagaming. Calling them out on that at first is the best way to approach it. Like, not necessarily being rude, but just saying, being, I guess, professional in a sense, just trying to call them out for it, because then they're going to be less likely to do that unless they choose to escalate, which hopefully it doesn't get to that. But
so you're saying, or you're suggesting, a subtle or a gentle hand advising the player is, are you saying the bully, or the subtle person, or the player who the subtle person is manipulating?
I would say both.
Okay, so basically you're addressing the game board, and you're saying, well, you want to be mindful of doing this because this player is not in your circumstance. They don't know all of the factors that you're dealing with right now.
Exactly.
And it's metagaming to take advice or to use out of game knowledge from somewhere across the map and apply it to your situation.
Exactly, because then that doesn't necessarily put the blame on one person, because if the person who is using that advice decides to use it, that's them, being involved in that as well and
Yeah.
choosing to do that. So addressing the whole table in that circumstance is the best way to handle it. And
It's a
hopefully that's the end of it. And in, I would say, most scenarios, that'll be the end of it, at least for them.
that's a general, it's a gentle way of just telling the entire table, hey, here's the rules. I'm not saying I'm going to crack down on you or anything, but by me citing the rules, that's telling you I am the rule enforcer here.
Exactly.
And
It's gentle, and it's not, overtly pointing someone out, because that can have a bad reaction at your table, especially
yep,
if these people are your friends and you don't want to be like, you are metagaming.
yep, yep,
Especially when they're getting other people involved, because then it's their metagaming. Um
yes,
the bully, well, I mean, honestly, it depends on how they're bullying and how far they go, but like, if they're really bullying you, you need to pull them aside, talk to them, say, "Look, you can't do that. You can't treat me like this. If you don't do this, if you don't like I guess get your act together, you can't be a part of this game. I won't accept that." Because and if they don't listen to you, you have to actually have the backbone to follow through and kick them. Because overall, if they're bullying you, that's setting the precedence for everyone else, that they can do the same thing. They can walk all over you. They can, in some cases, be disrespectful to you, because these people, I hate to say it often, are very disrespectful to you in your game.
oh yeah. I mean, they typically start out very harmless. They might say something like in middle of someone else's turn, they might say, "Hey DM, can I roll for loot?" And
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, dumb things like that. And okay, I should back up before, instead of just being like, you must kick out every player who does things like that. Like, that's obviously a minor example, and I would like to um say that what I use by kicking them out, that's only when it comes to extremes, if they choose to escalate it. But in all circumstances, I think it's best to just talk to players, because most people are going to correct their behaviors if they are notified of it, or if they're talked to. But if they don't change them, then you have to be the one to be like, all right, if you don't, you're out. Or if they do something, egregious and grossly out of like conduct, then you have to be the one to kick them out for the sake of the group and the sake
yeah,
of you having a good gaming experience.
yeah, because I mean, if you have as a DM, if you're spending a lot of time maintaining someone who is, it's one thing if you're maintaining the players and their story and their playing, like their actions, that's one thing. But if
Mhm.
you're maintaining a whole person who is waging war against you and every other player in the game, that's a whole burden. Like you're basically playing two games at that point, and you have to spend a lot of thought power trying to put a lid on this person who at any point in time can just start bullying you and just to get what they want. And that's going, other players are going to see that and they're going to say, okay, so this is what you have to do to get what you want, is you just got to bully
Exactly.
the DM.
Exactly. It sets the precedence for everyone else. And uh, you have to stand up for yourself too. You can't just be a doormat for your players. And I'm not saying like to be adversarial towards your players, because this is a cooperative experience and we're supposed to do this all together. But yeah, that doesn't mean be a doormat.
Yeah. And how about the high maintenance player?
The high maintenance player, uh I find that like high maintenance players are also the type of players that will try to push limits, in a
Yes.
sense. Like, they will be the ones that'll be like, give me this ultra powerful magic item that can resurrect people just because. You have to know when to say no to them, and you also have to explain why you're saying no, because if you don't explain the why, they're just going to try and nitpick you and try and get that answer. And if they continue to do that, you just have to put your foot down and say no, because some of them will, try and fight that and try and, find arguments and holes in your logic and things like that. But
Yep.
ultimately, you're the DM, and if you're saying, you're level 4, you can't have the the cape of resurrection. That's unreasonable. That you need to set your limits on that. And um, I also find that high maintenance players can also be the type of players that are the I want to do everything type of players. So um
I was gonna
like
say, I mean, we've had that experience. We've had that
yes.
experience in the DC
Mm.
Vertigo game where where several players wanted to do everything. I was gonna say one player, but there were a few, and it's like they want to
I
do
hope I
everything.
wasn't one of them.
No, you weren't. You and Clank were great. You and Clank were great.
And he brags about you like you're his children. Jesus.
Yes.
We are his children. I like he's literally like the person who was my first dungeon master. So yes.
I'm dad. I don't want to be dad. I want to be Pope.
Okay, Pope. But anyways, those type of players, like I find that what we did with Wally, for example. Sorry, I don't know if we should be name dropping, or if we
That's fine,
are, we
that's
should
fine.
create a ledger for like who's who, so that everyone's like, who are these people they keep talking about?
No, it's
But
fine. They don't need to know.
anyways, talking to them is the number one thing that solves most problems. But like ultimately, it depends on how far you want to push it and how far they're disrupting the game. And if they're really being disruptive, you've talked to them, you've tried everything. There's and the rest of your group isn't having fun, that might be a point to consider removing them from the group. However, if people are still having fun despite those flaws, that's a tough one.
Oh, that depends on what we're doing. Just so you know, there's two kinds. There's disruptive to the group, as in the player themselves is just wholeheartedly being a disruptive and antagonist within. Then disruptive to the group, as in the player is doing things with their character that literally disrupts the rest of the player in their characters from accomplishing something.
What do you guys think about the idea of, in that scenario, going around and asking the players? Because something we haven't really spoke on, and I guess we could probably save that for next time, is asking about player feedback.
Yeah, that is something that my players have brought up with Star Wars. Shout out to Niraj in chat. He brought up Geeks and Gamers Irudi. Something he does for his streams is at the end, he likes to go around with the players and ask them, what are their thoughts on the game? And that's something that's like really important. I for my game, I tell you guys, it's like I like to have an hour early and an hour late because I like to be able to talk to the players. Now, with the End Times campaign, we really got out of that trend. We really got out of that pattern of having the 5 to 6 post-game chat where we talk about the game and how things went, and the 12 to 1 where it's pre-game and people are just organizing their thoughts. They're thinking about, okay, last session I crafted this weapon and I can't wait to get into a situation where I need to use it. Or last session we were talking to that lady and then she transformed into something and I don't know what's going to happen now. We ended on a cliffhanger last week. So I really want to implement that again with all of my games going forward, because that's absolutely great. I love that. And I want more of that, talking with the players and letting them air out their things.
Yeah, I find that especially like in the like when we talked about like what we like, how we like to get our characters started, and how us as DMs get an idea for our characters. I like the idea of letting the characters have the first few sessions to figure out their characters as well, because what you write down on paper and then when you actually go to do it can be very different things. So when players actually get a chance to explore their character, they might not like certain things they wrote about their own backstories, or they might be doing something in character that they really like and they want to include more in their backstories, which I guess also plays into how the Benefactor was saying how he does his I guess his way of doing it is just giving them information, giving them stuff when they I guess sort of lean into that side of their character.
Oh, my other thing with the whole backstory thing, but this is why I mentioned earlier, like this is why you don't give the DM a 5-page of backstory. Like I said, again, Example with Jack here, when I did Tamaya's, I gave him general outline of things, the most crucial stuff, things like that for for his world and things, if this works. But a lot of stuff for my character backstory, he didn't know. It was stuff that I just had as miniature details that if X character talks to me, well, yeah, here's a little fun tidbit. That's not something I want to get to DM, because then I'll be doing that constantly. He'll just be having pages and pages of history, which is like, for what? He's not even going to use most of that, So that's why when I think when people write backstories that they want for the DM, it needs to be concise, very tight and concise, for what is going to be something that's going to be that is a big changing point. That's how I see it. What is the big changing point for your character to be doing this adventure and journey?
Yeah,
right.
That's something I bring that up all the time with my Star Wars game. It's, what is that moment that your character got pushed off the cliff to proceed down this adventuring journey? And that's the key thing that for the life of me, the do nothing players don't have an answer for. They always come up with like, oh, well, this happened to my character. And you can tell if you're paying attention to their story, when they give you their backstory, you can tell it's like their reason for leaving home, their reason for going on this adventure is very weak. Okay. And it's a difference in like, oh, I left home because I had to get some potatoes. Okay. That's not exactly, I'm not saying that's a weak explanation. That's a weak objective or a weak thing pushing him off the cliff. Okay. Because that in and of itself is weak. But if you include other stuff, like I was on my way to the store to get some potatoes, and then I was suddenly hit by a car, or a car accident happened in front of me, and I grabbed the hand of someone who was dying, and I was talking to them, and suddenly that was my moment of just realizing everything in the world as I know it. I had to do something. I had to change the fate of something. All right, that makes it a little bit more compelling. And so when I see these people do nothing players, they'll have something very simple like, my mom was killed and I never found the murderer. Okay, so what are you doing about it? Well, my character is haunted by the death of their mother. Okay, so what are you doing about it? Like that's the thing that pushes you off the edge, is what are you doing? Mom was here one moment, she's dead now. What are you doing? And if your character's not doing anything, you're like, oh, well, I'm looking around for something. I'm trying to find anything that leads to her murder, cause of death. It's like, all right, that's something, but it's still very weak.
That could be like an example on how you could make that better would be like, maybe they're looking for a man who has a very like distinct description, like a snake tattoo on his neck
Yes.
and piercing red eyes or something like that. Those are very distinct features, and this would give you a reason to look around brigades or thieves guilds or places that might be associated with
Yes.
your dead mother,
right?
killer.
And that, again, that's something just as a DM I'm paying attention for when it comes to someone's backstory. It's like when I start seeing those, oh, this really mundane flat idea, it's like, you got to give me something more than this, bud. Like, you got to give me something more, because you're just screaming at me you're a boring player. You're not a role player. You're just someone who's like, I'm here playing a video game with my video game character.
On that background of not having anything, then we get the players that have the entire family and everyone they knew and loved dead, and it's like, why do you exist in this world? Why are you still alive then? What are you looking forward to if everyone you know and love is dead?
Listen, don't go asking those questions. How would you like it if I start asking you those questions?
That I can't. You got it. I can't stand people that write that as a player entity. I just can't stand people that write that as their like backstory and stuff. It's like, you have no one, no one. Everyone's dead. Aunt, uncle, cousin, that grandpa from down the block. Everyone you ever known and interacted with is dead. Why the fuck are you doing anything? Like, I personally, if that happened to me, I would be dead. I would have killed myself right there on the spot. Like, if I have no motive of vengeance, I have no something, and I'm just like, everyone I know and love is dead. I don't know what to do. There's no one for me to talk to. I don't even have an object of vengeance to be my motivation to live. It's like, then why am I alive?
So Niraj says, depends on perspective and depth, really. For instance, one perspective, I was out chasing down this runaway droid. While I was out, the Empire came and killed my Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen. Like, right, exactly. Like, if you can make this mundane task or this mundane thing something interesting, if you can give me a little bit more meat to it, I can say, all right, this is a player I want in my game. You know, this is giving me something that my other players are going to enjoy interacting with. And that's, you know, I don't want too much, but I want something. I want to have something where it's like, okay, this player is walking the nice balance of they have a concept and idea for their character, but they're vague enough that they're letting me have some room to manipulate and change things. In the DC Vertigo game, Lady Potato, you gave me your character's girlfriend.
Yes.
And you didn't tell me anything about her, really.
No. And I left that intentional because, like, as players also, like, when you say that GMs want something to play with, well, players want something to discover, want things to learn about, want mysteries, and they want those twists and turns.
Yeah. So, you know, that was great character hook. It was like, okay, here's a character I can play with. And at that point, it was up to me as a DM to be like, okay, what's believable for her character to have? Because I can't have her girlfriend be someone who is over the top, loud, and obnoxious, while her character is kind of like your 80s rock star. Like their personalities might be oil and water.
More like 90s stoner kid.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, these characters are oil and water. It doesn't make sense why they're together, you know. And it's not like a Batman and Harley Quinn skit where they can pitch hit off each other. You're just looking at these two characters and you're saying, why are they together? So as a DM, it's a little bit of an art to maneuver and use the resources the players give you. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
I agree with Lady Potato, which you probably call it. I do have some topics for next week we can go over. You know, certain things like homebrew crafting systems and the players unwant to interact with those kind of homebrew stuff that you make, you know, type of stuff.
I want to definitely talk about that stuff. I love that.
So would that be like homebrew, like just crafting in general, or are we talking like weapons, enemies, bosses?
Homebrew in general. I was using a
Homebrew.
basic example as, you know, Jack knows where I'm getting at.
Yeah, he's talking about crafting. He's talking about systems within the game. That would be the general umbrella. So,
yeah.
You know, that would be like stores. You can come up with your own custom stores and how things work, your own crafting resources and materials to farm, your own NPC list. That's something you can do. You can come up with your own NPC list that players can buy, whether it's slavery or droids or just like deckhands for your ship.
So basically, the topic that we want to broach, I guess, next time that we decide to do this is homebrewing additional systems into the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I would like to do this next Thursday. If you guys are game for it, I'll probably nudge you next week sometime and say, hey, you guys want to do it again? Because consistency is key for this whole YouTube streaming thing.
For this whole little experiment. Yeah, that sounds good to me. I would love to do it next week.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I have no issue.
All right. Well, let's go around the horn. Lady Potato, would you like to introduce yourself if you want to plug any of your wares as like, hey, where anyone can find you, or if you don't, because, you know, you might want to keep your anonymity.
Oh yes, I am Lady Potato. I'm very, very anonymous, and not necessarily because, well, I gotta be honest. I'm very much a ghost online. I don't really post much or too much. May change in the future, especially if we keep up this whole streaming thing. But for now, that's all.
All right.
Benefactor.
This is your friend, the big bad benefactor here. You can find me at ChaosRyzen on YouTube. You can also find me as Ryzen on Twitch. Though been a little lacking, may just start it up again. But yeah, I'm there. You can find me Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
All right. And I am Jackaran. I appreciate you guys sticking around. And to those of you in the future who are watching this in the past, thank you.
What? You were watching this in the past.
Yes.
Hey, time travelers do exist now.
Yes, exactly. See, he gets it. See, I am
I get it. Okay, I
this
get
is something
it.
this is something that I didn't explain earlier. I am a sci-fi nerd. I love sci-fi. So you're going to get a lot of sci-fi stuff from me in the future, guaranteed. But all right, with that, thank you. Thank you, Niraj. I'll see you around too, buddy. For Sunday game, hopefully. Cheers.
Excelsior.